look around because you were just here for a world record. I think I'm probably the least intimidating person to ever walk out to that music. So congratulations to everyone to be here and see this. But excited to be here and talk with everyone for a few minutes. My name is Brett Steiger. I lead the brand marketing team at Travelocity. And I know I'm the last presentation before everyone gets to go finish all the pitches. So I'll try to be concise and I'll try not to waste too much time, as I know everyone has some last minute work to do. But as you can see, I wanted to take you through a little bit of a study we did, a little bit of a program we did around Shark Week last year. And the main thing I want to do is just hearing some of the presentations so far, which have been great, and hearing some of the questions. I wanted to try to make it as applicable as possible to everyone in this room, because I think what you'll see from this program is it was great, it did well. I'm sure everyone in this room has done a million of these types of programs or helped your clients do a ton of these different types of things. And so the takeaway from this is not of, hey, check out the really cool program I did and we're awesome. It's, hey, the takeaway is, here's an interesting program, but really, how can then I give some tips and answer any questions of how do you work with your clients? How do you help them continue to build on success over time? Because I think what you'll find is certain companies can get those big hits and those big breakthrough innovations or programs, but then how do you cycle that? Because then you're going to need it again. And so a lot of marketing and a lot of strategy and a lot of what I rely on from our agency partners are, how do we continue the momentum throughout the year? Whether it's a big hit or not, how do we make sure we're constantly connecting with our consumers? So quickly about this program, overarching goal was really Shark Week is huge, a lot of buzz. How do we tie into it as a brand, build off that buzz, and generate awareness and engagement with our consumers? So we had two simple objectives. It was one, generate more earned media than paid and owned. And then secondly, it is generate high engagement on Twitter, which was mostly where the roaming gnome talks. Obviously you have to then link those back to the business side of things, but I think the most important thing is you can buy awareness and you can game engagement, but if you kind of pair a few of those things together, you're starting to keep yourself a little bit honest of how can I do the right things to the large enough audience and also have them interact in a good way. So the idea, and we worked with our agency McKinney to help bring this to life, was literally we are going to create a URL and a microsite called howfaramifromsharksrightnow.com. So really quick, easy URL that really, just comes out easy for anyone to remember, but it was supposed to kind of be a cork, a whimsical play. The roaming gnome, who's our 2-foot-tall cement statue that can't move but yet travels the world, is very quirky and funny, and so it was a cool way for us to kind of jump on the Shark Week bandwagon without having a big media sponsorship, without really actually having any media during that time period on those channels. And so it was a fun way to bring it to life, and literally what we did was we put this out there, and on the microsite you can see on the far left, once you logged in through Twitter, it would let you know where you were located, and then it would pop up to where all the sharks are. And you could either choose that you wanted to go somewhere closer to sharks or farther from sharks. And then it tied into kind of different booking destinations that you could go to through Travelocity. So quick, easy, very simple idea of, hey, let's put it out there, let's take advantage of it. You can see the little quote there for people who have been swimming with dolphins, but it just wasn't enough. So just trying to add some fun to it because everyone gets excited every year about Shark Week. We started having a lot of influencers come out and get excited and tweet about this and get involved. And we put a little bit of money behind some social posts, but it was really just how do we get something out there, build on the buzz, and get some excitement. So one of the things we talked about was the earned media side. And I think where we were really excited was seeing the earned media take off. So we had Ad Week write about it. We were in USA Today. Shameless plug to Digiday. They wrote something about it. And a few others, which was great because what people were seeing was, hey, we were getting out there and everyone wanted to own Shark Week. Everyone wants to own the Super Bowl. Everyone wants to own the Oscars. All of these events that are becoming the how do I get involved without paying for it. And so this was a great way for us to kind of tie into it and generate that earned media. What we found was that we we did that quite well. 95% of our actual impressions were all through earned media, while just a small portion were from owned and earned. So it was definitely successful from that standpoint. We also had 3 times the engagement level with the Roaming Gnome account than we standardly do, which was another great situation and win for us. So like you see, that's why I wanted to kind of hop through this quickly, because simple program, nothing too special, but it was a great way for us to take advantage of buzz that already existed. So I wanted to spend a bit more time on these takeaways and then answer questions, because I think these are hopefully going to be helpful as you're working with the majority of the people in the room are on the agency side, and being on the client side, I know we can oftentimes be difficult or frustrating or maddening or just don't want to talk to us half the time. So I wanted to kind of focus some of this more on how do we leverage kind of that program and what are some learnings from there that y'all can use as you're trying to convince your clients to just follow what you want to do and stop taking the brand in a bad direction. So one, I would say keep it simple. For any math nerds out there, the equation does work. It just takes a little while to solve it. But this sounds simple, but it's not always easy. I know on the agency side, you're always wanting to bring that new big idea. Hey, we're going to get written up. We're going to generate this idea. The brand's going to skyrocket. But kind of what I said at the beginning, think about all those brands that had those kind of big one-time hits. How many of them have come back and cycled that again? And I think that's always the difficulty, is like you want the big thing, which is great, but how do you maintain that? Because in reality, most brands don't have the budget to just constantly invest in just big, huge, innovative things and then just try to do it over and over again, because the take rate and the win rate on those are so small anyways. And so for me, you want those big things, but build that credibility first. You know, you do some of these smaller things, Shark Week, for example, it starts building that credibility. I don't have to go into my boss and say, hey, I need $1 million extra because we have a really cool idea. And he's going to say, how is it going to drive the business? I'm going to say, don't worry about it. It's super cool, though. And that doesn't tend to go well for me. So, you know, build that credibility, keep it simple with some of these ideas. And once you've built that, then come in with that big innovative thought. And that's going to help us from the client side, at least, really understand how better to sell that into our leadership. Work together. So I love your e-cards. I think they're hilarious. And I thought this was especially relevant. I thought your idea to use my idea was a great idea. And I know we have that all the time with our agency partners, because it's like, well, I don't want to do what you said, or I want to change this. And they're like, well, I don't think you're really understanding what the vision that we're trying to pull forward. And, you know, I know at the end of the day, I always say I could never be on the agency side, because I can't imagine the frustration that everyone has to feel every time when you put hours and hours of work in, and then we're like, yeah, we don't like it, we think it sucks, like, go do something else. I don't think I could keep my mouth shut. So congrats to everyone here who have or are trying to at least be able to do that. But I think the focus on the work together piece is really spend less time arguing about, hey, no, either let's do our idea or scrap it all together, and really go back to those core objectives. I know from our side of things, what we're worried about is I could care less if my idea is used or not, if I throw something out. It's more of how do I hit my objectives and how do I frame up a success story to my leadership so that I can do this again in a month, or I can do this again next year. Without that, you know, the idea, there's no idea that's good enough to, you know, move aside the business objectives and the results. It doesn't matter how cool it was. If it doesn't tie to what we need, we can't sell it through. And so that's where I would say spend less time, I think, on both sides, fighting about whose idea is whose and really focusing on what we can do. And last is always be authentic. I'm a true believer that authenticity is the best tool that marketers and advertisers have in their tool belt. It's also the most underutilized tool that we have, because authenticity is hard. Authenticity is, it's easy to say, yeah, we're going to be authentic, except when there's an idea or program that goes against who you are but is going to generate some short-term revenue. That's where authenticity is difficult. How do you balance those pieces? But I've also found that companies who are authentic, and I know at Travelocity, we have battled authenticity some in the past, but I think it's one of those things that if you can keep true to that and you can help your clients really stay true to that, one, you're going to build more credibility as well, to say every idea isn't always the right idea, even if it ties into something big. So if there's a Super Bowl idea and really take advantage of it, like the Super Bowl, the wardrobe mishap from multiple years back. Well, if you're a brand that doesn't represent something like that, you don't want to take advantage of it, even if it's going to get you a lot of impressions and engagement. The short term does not make up for the long term. And I think bringing that type of mindset and lens to your clients where you're saying, I know we could get this, but this is why it makes more sense to hold out, or this is why it makes more sense to focus on these areas. I know for me at least, that's very credible in my mind. And that shows me that the agency is not just looking to get written up and move on to go get other clients, but they're actually looking out for my best interest, and it's a true partnership from that standpoint. So, like I said, authenticity, not always the easiest thing to do, but definitely something high of value. So, like I said, as promised, try to keep it short and sweet. I think we do have a few minutes for questions if people have it. And just know as a judge, if you ask questions, I'm not going to say you have a better chance of winning, but I can't say you don't. So I'll just leave it at that.
And the hands go up.
It sounds like you guys have a really strong editorial authority established for what your brand is willing to play in and what they feel like they can speak to. Can you talk about the filters that you put into place as you evaluate different situations?
Definitely. That's a constant battle, I'll say. We've had that struggle. We had that struggle for a while, and my team finally put together. We literally have a 3-book set of brand guidelines, GNOME guidelines, and then identity guidelines. And it's very clear both from a macro standpoint as well as from individual channels across social media, across content, across offline, to give people examples of how to do it. The difficulty is, as agencies and brand teams or whatever team is managing that, is you don't want to be the brand police, because if you are, then you're just the big Debbie Downer, and everyone's like, oh, I don't want to go to them because they're just going to say no. And so you have to strike the balance of really educating, whether it be your client or educating within the organization, so that everyone feels ownership to that. So it's not easy, and we still battle with that, and there's certain things that come out where I just have to kind of take it on the chin. But I think the more you can set those guidelines in place, get your top leadership to buy into it, because if they don't, no one else is going to listen to it.
I think we have mics in hand over there.
Yeah. As the client, what is kind of your biggest pet peeve when either talking with the agency or looking at a presentation and recommendation they're giving to you?
I think, that's a good question. I think one of them would be, sometimes we want our agencies to push the boundaries. We want those big ideas. But in all honesty, sometimes I just need to get some shit done. And so I think for me, when, I try to provide open communication as much as I can, because I know it's a guessing game for agencies, and you're gonna come back and we're like, I don't know why they hated it, because we hit on everything they said and could just be in a bad mood and we just decide we don't like it anymore. But I would say for me, it's when I say, hey, I need to get this done because this has been pushed down from my leadership. When I get pushed back on there and I just can't get that quick partnership and help, it bothers me a lot, because it's just adding more churn to my day. And at that point, I'd rather just go do it myself, because I'm like, I don't have time, but I'll just go figure out how to do it. So I think it is tough, but I would say it's that balance of knowing when to push, because if a client doesn't want to be pushed, then why do they have an agency in the first place? They have all the answers, go do it yourself. But I think there's a time and place for that, and so I think as an agency, it's finding those places where you want to push and you want to put your foot in the ground and say this matters, and finding other times where you just say, I don't know if I fully agree with it, but they seem like they need it and they need it quickly, so I'm just going to go help them do it.
One last question we have time for, if there is one. Over here.
The travel industry is very competitive in terms of really driving revenue. So how do you balance the fact that you're a brand that has to also drive revenue and keeping those intact, but also still having that big idea not being tied to that revenue on the back end?
Makes it lots of fun every day. No, it is, and that is something that we continue to discuss. It's pretty much because the industry is so commoditized, and in the e-commerce realm with travel, it's what have you done for me lately? I can measure everything. It is, we have to do enough in the short term to buy ourselves the long term. So I have a long-term strategy of where I want to be in 2 to 3 years. But in all honesty, some of we're acquired by Expedia in January. They probably don't care right now because they want us to hit our numbers. And so it's the balance of, great, I'm going to set that in motion, and I'm going to go do the right things and win the right consumers and set the tactics in place. But I know that if I can't win now and at least show some short-term impact, I am going to then not have the money and not get the budget to actually do all the things that drive the long-term strategy. So part of it is, and this is where authenticity and comes into play, is how do you make sure you stay true to who you are as a brand, even if you and your team are the ones that are realizing that you might end up in a different place in some of your leadership. In the short term, when you do have to balance multiple things, while also having vision enough to say, all right, we're going to push forward in the long term, and we're going to eventually be able to prove out that the strategy that we're employing now may be not the best way to go. Not easy, and it takes time, and a lot of that is it's a balancing act, but it's in some ways the only way to keep sanity sometimes when you're just talking to CFOs and people who are worried about just how much can I make this second right now. So
Great, that's all we have time for. But Brett's here, so thanks, Brett.
thank you.